everybody. Once again, I'm Lee Crafton Jr., aka Zorwatch on Last Thanger, and today I'm going to talk about my Cleric. So, yes, I know in Palladium it's priests, not clerics, but I decided to take the Shaman from first edition, which is extremely similar to the priest, except for their visions, their prayers were different than the priest, but all their other special abilities were the same. And for me, it's objectively worse than the priests. They had higher attribute requirements, and I believe their experience was higher. So they were like a quote unquote worse occupation that took more experience and attributes to be in. And that made it so that, except for one super high powered campaign that I was in where a person was a priest, got to level 15, and since you don't get higher than 15, switched to a shaman to get those 2 visions extra. There was otherwise I had nobody ever be a shaman. And once I added a few tweaks to being a cleric, which is a slightly more martial character than the priest, but a lesser martial character than my paladin, became really darn popular. And then I even had to do a tweak afterwards to make the priest somewhat tempting to play. So I want all my occupations to be tempting in some way. It doesn't mean that every player is going to want to play, but I want them to be somewhat distinct. And I don't think the shaman and priest were distinct enough, because the shaman in Palladium first edition, I'm talking about first edition here, wasn't necessarily the naturalistic type Siberian shaman or Native American shaman that is in popular myth as well as real world situations. So decided to move that over, make a cleric, and this is my cleric for my rewrite of the Palladium first edition. So attribute requirements, I kept the same: IQ of 9, PE of 10. Alignment, they can be any, but it should be somewhat close to the deity. They get their powers from a deity because they're clergy. So I say within one step, one shift, or if you have a deity that is unprincipled, you could go scrupulous, unprincipled, or anarchist. You probably should go too far away from that. Physical conditioning, since they're a mid between being a full combatant and a priest, my range of physical conditioning is 0 to 8, so +4 is in the middle. That fit well. Armor tier 1. They are a martial character, so they are trained in all armor, including heavy armor. That's one of the big differences. The physical condition is a little bit different from my priest, but the armor tier is one of the big differences from my priest. Restrictions: other clergy occupations are allowed only if the cleric's deity allows it. I have a whole list of all my deities and what type of clergy they have. So some priests, like my priest of war, they don't have, some deities, like my deity of Czar, he only has clergy of clerics and paladins. He doesn't have priests, but then other ones might have priests and clerics, or some might have priests and druids. Depending on the deity, they have different occupations that they allow as their clergy. So basically, if you're a cleric and you want to go and become a different clergy, that's fine. You just have to, your deity has to allow that. So divine prayer, invocation, mystic combat, cleric, hand-to-hand combat. If you're a priest of, you're a cleric of light, you get soldier. If you're darkness, you get assassin, and you can speak an additional language. Let's look at the level advancement chart. So level 1, like all Palladium games, first edition, I guess I should say, all Palladium first edition OCCs, this is where you get your elective and secondary skills. At level 2, you get a healing touch. Level 3 and 4, you get more skills. Level 5, you get resurrection, sense supernatural evil. Level 6, you get 2 additional hit points. Level 7, this is where they gain their magic point regeneration that goes from a 2 on the base to a 3 for that. So there's a little bit, a couple of levels higher. Instead of being 5th, which is kind of the general, they have to wait a little bit longer to get that. And that's mainly because I didn't want to have to move the resurrection and sense supernatural evil from the how it was written in Palladium First Edition when they got those abilities. I wanted it to be in the level chart to give them 3, so I had to adjust one of them. And I decided the 3 magic points being adjusted at 7 was better than moving the resurrection to 7. Um, but then they choose 3 elective skills at 8. At 9, they're along all the other mystical power people regenerating 4. They can choose 4 secondary skills at 10, more shock points because they are a martial uh, occupation at 11, more elective skills at 12, 13. They gain magic points, regenerate the max of 5, and then they go additional magic points, additional hit points. And that's your switch between they do some mystical stuff, divine things, and they do some martial things, and that's where they get their hit point bonus from. Elective secondary skills, exactly the same as Palladium First Edition list. These elective skills are the only skills you're allowed to choose from. Secondary skills, you're allowed to choose from anything on the secondary skill list. These are the ones that give you bonuses. And now we'll get into the abilities and the clergy, especially the priest and the cleric, to a lesser extent the paladin. This is where it starts taking up more than my one page. I wanted to try to keep things, but priests and shamans, which became my clerics, they have a lot of these little non-spell magic abilities that just took up space. So that's where we start getting into taking up more space. It was shown a little bit here with my beloved, where their special abilities and the demonic familiar required more page space, but it gets really intensive with my cleric and priest. So abilities, unless specified, they are used in mystic uh, combat, in mystic stance, combat stance, or no stance. So they can use these. They don't have to necessarily be in the mystic stance. And I talk about why I separated things off into 4 stances, but this says that these abilities can be used in these stances. And no stance is just, I'm not prepared, I'm not in a stance, but I could still do it if it happens. So animate command dead. This is clerics of darkness only. So there are certain powers that if you're a dark cleric that you can do that a light cleric can't, and vice versa. I tried to even them out as I could. So if you're a dark cleric, you can animate and command dead. And here's just uh, the details on that. Animated dead in Palladium. I did like how they had they didn't have everything lumped under undead. Animated dead don't have any consciousness. They have to be animated by some mystical force, and then they have to be given orders, and they don't have their own brain power to do anything. Undead, usually in my game, they have a soul that's bound by mystical means, but they have their own consciousness, even if it's a base consciousness that's kind of messed up, like my lower undead, like ghouls. But I did like that separation between animated dead and undead, so I have kept that. So these are going to make zombies. If they're corpses, they're going to be zombies. If they're bones, they're going to be skeletons. And it says that they can animate 1 large, 2 medium, 4 small, because I had the different size levels. So I wanted to make sure that that was explained, because my damage is based off of size dice with weapons. So instead of the priests always trying to find the biggest, the very large, the large, etc., only work with those, they might want more. So then they might have to work with smaller sizes. So that is where that is. Success is 8% per level. And then I have a monsters and creature sections at some time that I'll go over with, that they would then look at that section and be able to use those stat blocks. Combat training. So all men of arms have automatic parry. That the only stipulation is they can do automatic parry all day, all night. Any opponent, any attack that they understand is coming towards them, so not sneak attack or surprise attacks, but they can parry certain ranged things they can't parry unless they have a shield. And I wanted to keep the men of arms in that category the best. So even better than the mages, like my sword mage, or the gladiator, which is an entertainer, or the cleric or paladin, which is a clergy member. I still wanted them to have the best, but I wanted to have a replacement for the marshals in the other category. So this is where the cleric's combat training is. They gain an automatic parry of a man of arms occupation, but if the parry fails, you cannot spend an action to dodge afterwards. Men of arms, their little special bonus is they don't have to spend an action to parry, but if they fail a parry and they really want to try to avoid that damage coming in, they may spend an action to immediately attempt a dodge roll. So it does cost an action, but it's a second chance, a last chance, if you want to say, before the damage hits them. The clerics can get that same automatic parry, but by doing so, they forego a dodge. If there's something coming in and they know they have a decent chance and they fail the parry, they might want to do a dodge because, again, if they have a high chance and they just rolled low, so they might need, if they're using that automatic parry, they don't get that extra chance. So that's the trade-off. The players that have played the clerics have been happy for that trade-off, so I don't know how powerful that trade-off is, but I've seen enough men of arms use that dodge, spend that point, and then succeed at the dodge, that it is something. So that's where the men of arms has the boost, but the cleric does have that martial training. Curse is for clerics of darkness over. There's no level here, so they get it up to twice per day, resetting at sunset. That's my reset rule. Sunset for darkness, sunrise for light, sunset for evil, sunrise for good. A cleric can attempt to inflict a curse upon an individual object or area effect up to a radius of 3 meters or yards. And this just is the detail. Very similar from the priest and shaman in first edition. Their curses can be pox, fever, and ill luck. I think those are pretty similar from the normal Palladium rules. So that's what they get. At exorcism, they will drive out evil spirits and other entities. Since it doesn't say dark or light, both of them can do this. It does require a D6 hours of prayer and meditation to perform. They also have to have their holy symbols and all of that stuff. The difference is that the success is 7% for clerics of light and only 5% for clerics of darkness. And I think that might be something or inspired by Palladium 2nd edition, which differentiates between the light and dark a little bit more. So that's where I get that from. Magic points are based off of mental affinity. Again, your conviction in your deity. Mental affinity is along with your confidence, all of that in your deity. Mental affinity is confidence. It can be confidence in yourself and confidence in the higher power. Clerics and clergy, theirs is in the higher power. So that's what gives them their magic points. Penance, this is from the Palladium book. They can resist thirst for up to 2 days per level and hunger for up to 3 days per level. And I do definitely have distinctive, these are hunger and thirst effects, how they are penalties. So this is really good. If you, anything from your being put in prison and not fed well to you're out and your supplies are running low, your cleric and your priest could say, okay, other people, you you take this, you eat it, I can deprive myself of this nutrients and not be affected by it. So that's a really nice thing. The prayer acquisition, the cleric gains prayers at each level based on the prayer chart below. They work exactly as spells. In my, I want to say in my beloved, I explain my, if I say fluff, I'm using divine terms, and if I'm doing mechanics, I just say magic. Same thing, it's just expressed differently in the world. One is coming from higher powers, that's divine, that's prayers, that's invocations. The other is from training, that's magic, spell casting. Mechanically, same thing. Prayer acquisition works the same. There's a chart. You have so many at first level, you gain so many at second level, you gain them up to the level you are. So at third level, you attain third level, you get to choose between levels 1, 2, and 3, etc., all the way up. Divination, again, there is no level, so any of them in both can get this. The cleric can attempt divination up to 2 times per day. Resets at sunrise for clerics of light, sunset of clerics of darkness. That's where the difference is there. It enables the cleric to see glimpses of possible immediate future. This is the vision, I think, of the prayer of divination. So that is how it moved from the shaman to the cleric, and they can foretell if the person, the place, object has ill intentions or good will towards the cleric. The cleric may also get a glimpse of danger that may happen in the next 24 hours. Very subjective, very wishy-washy how the game master wants to do it. It takes 1d6 minutes or rounds and has a success ratio of 12% per level. So it's very much from the shaman. Remove curse. The cleric can remove mystical curse, right? Similar to exorcism, if the remove curse is successful, all effects are permanently removed. If the victim is linked to a curse object, the link will be broken. It can only be attempted once per person, per target. And then this is another one where the clerics of light have a slight advantage at 7% and darkness for 5%. Doing curses easy is only done by priests of darkness, but getting rid of curses and exorcism, driving that evil away, is easier for the priests and clerics of light. So that's where that thing is. Turn dead is a cleric of light power. So animate was the cleric of darkness. Clerics of light turn dead, and that's animated dead, not undead. It even says vampires, mummies, ghosts, wraiths, other spirits, and undead will not be forced to leave, but it does affect them somewhat. And I'm not sure if that, I can't remember if that was from Palladium or if it's something I wanted to add because I thought at least something, because that is typical in fantasy, pop culture, and stuff, is the vampire might be held a little at bay, but some movies have them where they just laugh and do it. So this was kind of a middle ground. And then the success is 20% plus 5% of level. Vision of grandeur. This is one of the prayers that the clerics or the shamans get that I brought over from my clerics. Once per day, resetting sunrise or sunset, depending on light or dark. You attempt a vision of grandeur. And what does it do? It grants a 1 to saving throw, which isn't that great. And again, why I say that in Palladium, the shaman's prayers are objectively worse than the priest's prayers, because priests can get things that give them better uh, bonuses. And their divination attempts are at plus 5% for 6 hours. So the plus 1 to save and the 5% to this divination, which is possible future, possible gaining of knowledge, just didn't seem on par with the priest things when their experience cost more to get up and they had harder requirements to get into the occupation. So I added the combat training, I added the physical conditioning, I added the tier 1 armor, I added the combat training. That has made this a really popular um, occupation. At 5th level, good and evil, or sense good and evil, all clerics will get. They can sense that fifth level, they get resurrection, and the conditions of it are the same, if not similar, to the in Palladium. And then the prayers are at first level you gain one prayer, second level you gain two. And I think what I did on this, because in Palladium the shaman and the priest use the same chart, but Priest of Light actually got less spells and the Priest of Darkness got more spells, and that might have been an evil temptation. Dark side is, tempting and saying, hey, you'll get more power, come to the dark side. What I did is I took the lesser value and gave it to the cleric, and took the greater value and gave it to the priest. So where this one starts off with one, the priest probably starts off with two. When we get to the priest, we'll be able to see if that was correct or not. So, having said that, once again, I'm Liam Crafton Jr., aka Zorbalch on Less Than Guru, and until next time, I will catch you later.